So, as much as I am a fan of crab cakes, I think that the actual act of eating steamed crabs and picking them in a local restaurant is one of the most authentic experiences that you're going to get. You look at Baltimore as a crab, but in order to really get to know Baltimore, you've got to get inside and pick the crab. And until you do that, you're just going to be stuck with a lot of questions.
I love that. That is today's guest, Brian Oliver, a world traveler in Baltimore, Maryland local, who is going to help us do just that, just what he said there. Get inside and pick the crab. We're going to get his top 7 hidden gems in Baltimore, Maryland. Why Baltimore? Well, I love exploring and discovering places that aren't on a lot of travelers' radars, let alone on their itineraries. And Baltimore, I believe, is one that's worth putting on yours. Some of my earliest travel memories took place in Baltimore. Early on, when I was road tripping around the United States during my nomad days, I ended up in the Baltimore area for a bit over a month and loved my time there. Ended up revisiting the city many times over the years. And it's been a little while since I'd been. So getting to hear about modern day Baltimore and some of the reasons why it's worth visiting now, reasons like this.
There's new businesses opening up every time, you go out. The seasons are changing. It's getting warmer. Baltimore comes alive when it gets warm outside. And that's the time when we can really show off.
Things like this coming out of this interview got me so excited to go back and see Baltimore right now. So now it's your turn. Let's dive in and discover Baltimore today. Welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey, it's Jason here with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show. Thank you for hanging out, letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms, to fill your life with as much travel as you desire, no matter what your situation or experience. And one of the things I love to do with this show, I'm so lucky to be able to highlight destinations that I love. And as you heard at the top, we're talking about Baltimore, Maryland today. We have a native and world traveler, Brian Oliver, here to take you on a guided tour of his hometown, revealing some of the city's best kept secrets and must-visit spots. You can learn more about Brian's work and travels over on his website, beyondbmore.com. That's beyond, BMORE.com, where you'll find, of course, all of his socials if you want to connect with him, and some articles and helpful resources. And Brian is a passionate traveler. He's visited 60 countries plus, but keeps finding himself drawn back to his hometown. And after hearing this episode, you'll have a better understanding as to why, as Brian shares his curated top 7 hidden gems, including the best neighborhoods to explore, the perfect starting point that will inspire your entire Baltimore adventure, and loads more. Baltimore, aka Charm City, is an affordable off the beaten path destination, well worth a visit. When you finish up this one, check out baltimore.org for all of your trip planning needs. They've got a ton of amazing resources. I want to thank the team over there at Visit Baltimore for connecting me with Brian and helping me put together a fantastic episode showcasing some of the best that the city has to offer, and for supporting this podcast here, including Zero to Travel as a part of their recent effort to get the word out about all of the memorable travel experiences that await you in Baltimore, Maryland. I love spotlighting destinations here, and I know you're going to love this one as well. So thanks for tuning in. Let's dive in. Here's my conversation with Brian. I'll see you on the other side. Brian Oliver, welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
The resident Baltimore expert with, as we were talking before, the sweetest Orioles hat I've seen in a while. Love that.
Gotta
cap.
have it. I'm excited.
You have been traveling quite a bit for quite a long time. I do want to talk to you about what keeps bringing you back to Baltimore. But first, I just wanted to learn a little bit more about your life growing up. I know you said on your website that your love for travel and empowerment began as a young boy, and I'm just wondering what your earliest memory is. And yeah, can you kind of like paint the picture for us, what you mean by that?
Yes, for sure. I knew growing up. So my granddad, he is a minister, and a part of his duties involved, taking frequent road trips along the East Coast. And not just because, he was my granddad and he and my grandma were babysitting me a lot of times, but I just enjoyed the thrill of hopping in the car, not really knowing where I was going, but knowing that I was going somewhere that I hadn't been before, and just arriving and seeing something different, getting to know different people. And it was like a constant cycle. We might go to Washington, D.C. one week and Philadelphia the next, or maybe Virginia, on down to like North Carolina and places like that. And it was just always like, I don't know, it was like a thrill. It was super exciting. And following that, I can remember taking train trips with my parents to go see family in Greensboro, North Carolina. And one year we even took the train all the way down to Orlando, Florida, to go to Disney World on a family trip. And a few years later, we took an even bigger group trip to Orlando. So, it started off with like train rides and car rides, and eventually taking flights to different places. And the older I got, I continued to do that with family for different reasons. It might have been personal travel, or maybe still traveling with my granddad. And then my friends and I began to travel different places, especially as we got to high school and moving on to college. We would take domestic trips wherever we would find a cheap flight, which then turned into taking international flights, wherever we found something that was cheap and affordable. And I just haven't stopped. I always say I've gone to what many would consider to be the best public schools that Baltimore has to offer. And not just Baltimore, but the state and the country, based on rankings and awards and everything that my schools have received. And then on to college. But traveling has provided me with the best form of education that I've ever received. And I don't think money can buy what I've been fortunate enough to see and learn.
From my research, and perhaps I'm a little bit off at this point, but you've been to nearly 60 countries. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think I recently went over 60, but I honestly stopped counting. It was just one of those things I feel like you do a lot when you're younger, and you do keep track, but I don't remember the last time that I sat there and counted where.
Well, what keeps bringing you back to your hometown of Baltimore, Maryland?
Well, for one, it is family. I'll say that we own and operate funeral homes in Maryland, which is one thing. So my family's here for business purposes, but there's also just something. I always say there's something about home. I've gone so many places that have reminded me of home in the weirdest moments, but it's evident that when I did the research that, hey, this is something that was inspired by Baltimore. I remember being in Sydney, I believe it's Darling Harbor, and I'm looking around and I'm like, wait a minute, this looks like Baltimore. And then I go and do research, and yes, it was kind of modeled after Baltimore's Inner Harbor. It's just something about home. I do know that there's a special bond here that I have with people, especially my friends who are still around, and just the people in the city.
Yeah. Well, can you tell us a bit about the people? Because that is, as you know, as a traveler, the people on the ground that you meet, they're the ones that really bring a place to life. Of course, you have the sights and some of the amazing attractions, experiences you can have, which we're going to talk about today. But of course, the people, they're the ones that some of the most memorable encounters. Can you talk about the people of Baltimore?
Absolutely. So, we have this reputation for being only known for television shows or things like The Wire or The Corner or, other shows that have come about. Some are very, very popular, even when it comes just down to like Broadway, things like Hairspray, plays like that. Everyone always thinks about the people. And one thing I'll say is that I have a lot of friends from out of state, clearly from traveling and even out of the country, who I have been fortunate enough to host here. And I always say that when they leave Baltimore, they go back home. But when they, reach out again, they don't say, hey, I remember that place we went. That it's very rarely about a landmark. It may be about a meal that they've had, but they're always asking about like someone. Hey, who's that? How's that guy doing that we met? at, at this restaurant or at that bar, or when I come back, I want to go back to that neighborhood because the people there were just so fun and so hilarious and welcoming. So it's something about the people here. I think, compared to most cities on the East Coast, we're a lot more relaxed than you would think. It's a busy place, obviously, but the people here aren't necessarily always in a hurry, like some of the other cities that you uh, run into. And I think that people here are just genuinely curious about you and your story and your background. A lot of people will ask you, well, what brought you here? If you are a visitor, they're curious as to what has you visiting. But then after that, I think they're excited to see that you're here, you're experiencing the city, and you're not letting anything that you might have heard that was negative deter you from coming and actually getting into Baltimore and getting to know it for what it really is.
Well, I was going to ask you, what's making Baltimore special right now? I know you have I saw a t-shirt on your website that says the future is Baltimore.
I mean, one thing that catches me off guard every time I go out here, and I go out pretty often just to different events or just to hang out and catch up with friends, I see something different every time I drive around. And it's just like, there's so much development. The people are outside there, showcasing their talent everywhere. There's a new mural that's popping up every time I turn the corner. There's new businesses opening up every time, you go out. And there's a lot of support right now for small business owners here. And, everyone has an opportunity, I feel, at the moment. It's just one of those periods where if you're going to do something and there's something that you desire to do, this is the time, I feel, to take advantage of that opportunity to do it. And I always say this as well. The seasons are changing. It's getting warmer. Baltimore comes alive when it gets warm outside. And that's the time when we can really show off. I always invite people here no matter what the season is, but when it gets warmer, I'm like, hey, I need you to come because you're going to experience something that, almost everyone who leaves says they didn't come long enough. So, a weekend is fine because that's a lot of people are able to do, but you need a lot longer to really explore and get to know the city.
Yeah, I think that was one of the intentions with this episode is just like, hey, you could make it a day trip from DC or whatever, but there's a lot more to discover than a day trip's worth of discoveries, let's say.
Yeah, that's the thing. You live on the East Coast, or if you're visiting cities on the East Coast, it's so easy to hop on a train or get in a car and do like a day trip. But I say that we're one of those cities a day is not, it's not enough time at all. And a few days isn't even enough.
Yeah. Talking about the art and the small businesses. And those are things I think as a traveler, sometimes you could categorize those types of things as like, yeah, that's just part of, that's great. That's, as far as the locals are building the city for the infrastructure, for the future of the city. But is that really impacting me? But yes, it is, because that's what creates the culture. When you have a city that can systemically support small businesses and is proactively empowering people, all people, obviously that impacts your travel experience, right? Like, I think that's something that's maybe not talked about enough.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think a lot of people realize how diverse Baltimore is. You can go from neighborhood to neighborhood that you think are really, really close, like distance-wise, and you get something different in each one. And that's one of the things that I also love. It's like whatever you're in the mood for, especially when it comes down to dining or the culture of, a place, you're going to get it here. I mean, there's people here from everywhere. And everyone's going to tell you something different about what makes Baltimore home to them or what makes Baltimore special to them. You're very rarely going to get the same answer depending on who you talk to.
Yeah. It's also, it was interesting to hear what you said before about kind of for an East Coast city being pretty chill. I suppose got me coming from Philly and very familiar with the New York area and everything. It's definitely feels like a more of a high stress area, but it's interesting to hear that.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of times when I travel and I come back home, and when you asked me earlier, what keeps bringing me back, there's always like a sense of relief getting back from a destination, whether it was somewhere that I felt was much slower and more chill than home or much faster. it's like your body knows. It's like, all right, you can relax a little bit. You're home. You're around people who are, you know, different from where you've been, but that's what makes it more special.
Well, I know listeners, we love to find the sort of the hidden gems and some of the, maybe you could even say less visited places in some ways. And I think Baltimore fits the bill. So I know you have a list here, a curated list. You're an expert on this area. You grew up there. You know the city inside and out. I wanted to go through this list and maybe you can give people a taste of what they're going to discover on a trip to Charm City, which is a very cool nickname for Baltimore. Before we dive in, do you want to frame up the list? How did you go about curating it and creating it?
So as I mentioned earlier, well, for sure, Baltimore is a city that is made up of the neighborhoods, and the neighborhoods and the people in the neighborhoods make the city and your visit here what it is. The neighborhoods are the same, but they're different, like I said. And I think what makes that so important is that, you know, you can come and you'll visit one place and you might visit another neighborhood, and then you figure out, hey, I fit in more in this area. You know, the people there are more like me. There's more that I would like to do in this neighborhood than I like to do in that neighborhood. And once you discover the city and those different areas of interest for yourself, you'll fit in a lot more, especially when people are thinking about moving here. You can look online and say, oh my gosh, this building is beautiful. I really like, you know, the way this building looks or what I'm seeing in this or in this area. And then you'll get there and you don't like it at all, but it'll take you really digging deep into the city, going out, venturing and exploring to realize, hey, well, maybe this is more like me, where I thought, you know, I was going to want to do this or want to do that. Because of course, just like any city you go, you chase like the major landmarks or like the beauty and the glamour. And then sometimes you realize that, hey, maybe that's not as authentic as I thought it would be to represent this place. So of course, I've got my favorite neighborhoods, and I've also got some of my favorite places, I guess you could say, that I would recommend anyone go and see as soon as they get here.
All right. Well, I asked for 7 hidden gems. We're happy to share more. You got them.
Sure.
You know, if you want to do some cheats along the way, and I don't know how you broke it down with neighborhoods and stuff like that. I mean, we love to hear about travel experiences here. Yeah. I mean, I guess lay it on us. Yeah. Where should we start?
So, I mean, for one, I always start off with the Federal Hill neighborhood. And the reason I say that is because there is clearly a hill there. And when you go to the top of that hill, I think that's going to be the best view that you'll get of the city. And the reason that I love Federal Hill is, for one, of course, I like to travel and create travel content. So just the views, the images, which you'll see there, whether it be photo or video, it's just going to give you an amazing background. But that's also where I feel you can sit down and look out. And as far as you can see, you'll see all the different areas of the city. And that's when you can sit there and imagine, you know, what each of those areas are like, what they could be like, and what you'll get once you actually go into those communities. I know that a lot of people sit back and they get inspiration just from looking at something. And to me, I can go there every day if I wanted to. And every day I'd have a different thought in my mind that might encourage me to chase after a dream that I'm going after, or I'll have that light bulb moment where something just comes to me because I'm sitting there looking out, and you know, and you can see what's going on in the city, but you really can't. So it's just like, you know, if nothing else encourages you to get out and explore it, I think that's a perfect place that will encourage you to get out and explore it. I mean, you're looking at the harbor, but like I said, if you look, if depending on where you're standing, you may look to the left and see, you know, stadiums. You look to the right and you see homes. You know, you see people walking, you see people interacting, you see kids playing. You'll look further and you'll see all the major development that's going on. So that shows you the potential of the city and where it's going. And then you, like I say, you're looking at the harbor, which is, you know, the landmark to most people. That's what you see when you look at advertisements. That's normally the first thing that a lot of people will show about the city. But that's also one of the major places right now that's going through a redevelopment. And that's like what the future of the city is going to be.
I love that on so many levels. That's such a cool way to think about it. It's a kind of a layered thing because you have the meditative like overview of the city, like you said, and you can use your imagination and all, but then there's like this layer of possibility, what you're going to discover and inspiration and everything. It's a really cool way to kick this off. And also, yeah, just a cool idea for like a first touch point in any city, right? Like if you can get that overview and just kind of like you get, of course, the geography, but then, yeah, from a mindset perspective, you're also kind of, all right, like, let me get my head around this, like, let's just figure out what's going to happen here. Like, we don't know. It's like that sort of sense of adventure. I love that.
And if you go up there on, say, 4th of July, that's where you'll see the fireworks.
Oh, nice.
The best and things like that. So that's, like I say, that's one of my favorite places. First place I like to take a lot of people. And then following that, I love the Mount Vernon neighborhood, which is, to me, like the cultural hub of the city. There's so many museums there, old school houses. The original Washington Monument is located there. And a lot of people don't know that that's, when the first one was before there was one built in DC. So that's like one of those overlooked fact. You have libraries there. Like I said, there's museums there. It's really, really walkable. The major performances that you'll see in the city, besides at the arena, will take place there. Like, there's the Symphony Hall. There's it's called the Lyric. It was the Opera House. There's universities in the area. And a lot of restaurants that people love are located there. As we were saying earlier when we were talking about what there is here, you'll find big chain restaurants, but you're not going to really see them everywhere. You're going to find smaller mom and pop places, and like a lot of new restaurants are popping up in that area. And these are restaurants that are owned by people who you've probably grown up with or you've seen around, and you're like, hey, they are a really great cook, or they make some really great juices and things like that. And now they are able to expand and show that to the world. And this is one of those areas where you can stop there. And once you start exploring, you'll find that you spent a lot of time there, a lot more time than you intended. So yeah, I would say that's Mount Vernon, which I absolutely love. Yeah.
If somebody finds himself there, and of course, like you said, there's tons of options, but what would be your one or two, like, all right, at least, if you're going to do one thing, at least do this in this neighborhood, whether it's a place to eat or a thing to get or a shop to visit or.
I mean, I would go, like I said, right where the original the Washington Monument is. I would go there and just let that be sort of a base and walk around from there and stop into a lot of the shops along the street that you'll see and support the local businesses. There are like clothing boutiques around there, and there are a lot of restaurants that you can stop in and visit. And I mean, you have the main branch of the library there, which is an amazing building in itself just to go in. I know a lot of people don't think to visit libraries anymore because everything we need is like right in the palm of our hands. But even just walking through that building and you look around and you look up in the air, every time I go, I'm just like, wow, this place is beautiful. And they also host a ton of community events that are free. I mean, some of the biggest artists and authors that you can think of have gone there and done things for the community for free. There's always something going on there.
Amazing. Yeah. Libraries in general. I'm a super fan. You could find anything. And of course, libraries are free, and that's always nice too. Who doesn't love a library?
Pretty much. It's also one of those things where, like, even if you're in another city or another, country, when you get overwhelmed sometimes when you're out exploring, it's like, hey, you can go sit in the library and get yourself back together. And nobody's going to say, like, why are you here? You got to go.
Totally. It's a great travel tip.
Right.
All right. We got Federal Hill. We got Mount Vernon. What else you got for us?
Okay, so I always say this as well. I am a big sports fan, as you can see on my hat. I love taking people by Camden Yards, Oriole Park at Camden Yards, which is the baseball stadium. And that's another place where I've seen its impact on other places that I've visited. It is the original stadium that changed the way baseball stadiums look. It's retro. Took an old building, an old warehouse, and built a baseball stadium around it right in the heart of downtown. And once this stadium was open, other places in the U.S., other teams started to model their new stadiums right after it. And that's why you see all these baseball stadiums now that aren't far out, in the suburbs. They aren't like super modern looking, like, stadiums that don't look like a baseball game will be played in them, but they're located in the heart of their cities. You'll see the buildings in the background. They have that old retro look that people love about baseball. So I'm always telling people, hey, let's go to Camden Yards, check out a baseball game when you're in town.
Amen. You don't need to be a baseball fan to enjoy it either. That's the thing.
Not at all. And some of the best food that you'll get in the city is offered in that stadium as well. They have their stands in there.
All right, let's say somebody goes there. What should they get? Because the food at the baseball stadium, that's a huge part of the experience, right?
I'll say Boog's Barbecue.
Okay.
Which is one of the staples. And also there's a lot of crab inspired dishes in there. You'll get crab fries, you'll get crab hot dogs. And of course, crabs are another thing that we're known for. That's one of the first things people want to do when they get here. They're like, hey, take me to enjoy some steamed crabs or to find a crab cake.
Before we move on from the stadium, just as you pointed out, I think it's amazing to think that sort of that movement, like you said, of the retro downtown ballpark with the modern amenities, that started with Camden Yards. And it's just a cool example of, and perhaps this is representative of other parts of Baltimore as well, that when somebody sort of like, all right, instead of building this giant stadium and trying to maximize for profit, like let's maximize for character and experience. Exactly. You know what I mean? It's just...
Yeah. As you said, you don't need to be a baseball fan to go to a baseball game and enjoy yourself. And that's another one of those places where you can just walk around and take it all in. And, I know that sports is another thing that brings people of all backgrounds together. So that's another way that you can get a feel of what the city is like, who's really in the city, because there's fans from all different types of backgrounds and they're coming in from everywhere to experience, a day at Camden Yards. It's also fun when we play like rivals and everything, because there's people coming in from their city and, they get to really see what Baltimore has.
Yeah. Then get your tickets in advance, I guess.
all the time. You got to be quick, because it's like, hey, don't let them take over, because they are coming.
There you go. So people that are planning a trip to Baltimore coming out of this, then they put that on your to-do list in terms of some things to lock down.
For sure.
All right. What else you got for us, Brian?
All right. Obviously, I already kind of mentioned, but the Inner Harbor, that's another place where you're not on top of Fed Hill anymore. You can see Fed Hill from the harbor, but you're down on the ground. And like I said, I can sit there all day and look at the water and all the boats coming in. It could be a ship that's coming in, for a particular reason. There could be a cruise taking place, a dinner cruise or something like that. But you'll also see just normal, everyday citizens out there on their boats, entertaining, coming in to get that view. Like I say, the views from the middle of the harbor are amazing. And that's another place where you can stand and look around and see everything that's happening. And, you know that, hey, there's a lot of development taking place here that's going to hopefully change the city for the good and not the bad. I know that happens in a lot of places. Things will change to the point where people don't feel like they connect as much as they did to home or to a place. But, I do enjoy the fact that a lot of the development that takes place, they ask the citizens what their opinions are and what they want. So hopefully, it stays what it is. As I said, there's a lot of things taking place there right now that are making sure that, you continue to bring people back into the original hotspot of the city. And, you get to enjoy. I know, for instance, during the Christmas season, there's the Christmas Village there, which makes that area, it turns it into a German Christmas market, which you're not going to get everywhere, which is super cool. You can shop, you can enjoy food and drinks, and you got an amazing view in the background. And now also they switched it up a little bit in the springtime. You get Wine Village, which turns it into, a wine festival, so to speak, right in the heart of the city.
Is it fair to say, Brian, that area, the Inner Harbor, is the most, let's say, tourist area, the most popular sort of place to visit for people that are...
Yes. And I think it's just because, that's like most people's starting point. They're going to be down there for a reason, whether it's where they're staying or just they're just like, oh, we've got to go to the harbor because, I've gone out of the country, out of the state, and I've met people, especially those who are older than me. And when I tell them where I'm from, that's normally the first thing they mention. Oh, that harbor is amazing. We went there years ago, as a family. So that's what most people know.
Yeah, it's like iconic, I guess you could say, an iconic piece of Baltimore. And some of these places, although it might be more crowded than some of the other places on this list, it's one of those, yes, a lot of people are visiting there, but there's a reason. It's still worth going and checking out. And yeah, by my count, we're on to number 5.
We're on number 5. We're moving quick. So I will also include, which is one of my favorite places in the city. It's a museum. It's the Reginald F. Lewis Museum, which is where you can go and learn all about over 400 years of Maryland's African-American history. So, Baltimore, at the end of the day, is a city that is made up of a majority African-American population. And there's so much history here in that aspect that has not just shaped this state, this city, but the country and even the world. And just to go and, this is like a permanent collection where you can learn all about how Maryland's Maryland's impact in, media, the arts, politics, things like that. Not to mention the space is amazing. And this is like their 20th year here. It's right downtown as well. So it's also a place that you can visit easily and then move on to try out a restaurant or to walk through a neighborhood that's nearby. And there's different neighborhoods on each side, no matter which way you turn. So I always mention, hey, I think you should stop at the Lewis Museum if you're in the area and it's not at the top of your list. Because, of course, now you can go to D.C. where you'll find like the larger Smithsonian museums. But we've got some gems here. So I say the Lewis Museum. If you're downtown, if you're in the downtown area, but if you're not in the downtown area, it's still a place that's worth checking out and visiting. It is, it's right there, easily accessible from the harbor area and the Harbor East area, which is the newer area where you'll find a lot of people. There's a lot of shops there and a lot of restaurants and a ton of development taking place there as well.
Is there something that you saw at the museum that really stuck with you or made a huge impact on you personally?
Some of the exhibits there that, for instance, we're sitting here talking about, we talked about seafood earlier. We talked about crabs. And then you learn that, there's certain terms like backfin crab meat that was created in Maryland. And you don't even know that unless you were to go in the museum and check out that exhibit while you're walking through the museum. There's different things in there that I can relate to because it's like something as personal as like an exhibit on the barbershop and how big of a part the barbershop plays in our communities here. It's like another spot where everyone comes together and you talk. It's like, it's for me, it's weekly, but you go, you relax, you have conversation, you see people from the area that you might not see if you're just like normally going places. Everyone comes in. I mean, I think it's the same way if you talk about, beauty salons or, like I say, it's the barbershop in there, but then they also have, exhibitions that show, the way restaurants are built in, in the area or the community, the music, like the impact that, the music scene here has had on, other places in the country. I mean, there's some artists that I wouldn't even think had come to Baltimore, but you find out, hey, they stopped here during their tours back in the day and things like that. So I'd say that exhibit. And then they have this new exhibit, Titan, which highlights the life of Reginald F. Lewis, who the museum is named after. And that's just amazing to see. It's new, it's interactive. And just to see how he built an empire, he and his wife, who is actually not African-American, but she's Filipino, but just to see the empire that they were able to build and, him being a local who unfortunately passed earlier on in his life, but he still had an impact that has lasted all of these years.
Yeah, that sounds like that's a must see to really understand the area and be able to really get a full picture. And speaking of making an impact, you're doing that as well in travel. I want to talk about that in a little bit because I know you've got a pretty amazing nonprofit. I want to hear a little bit more about that, and that definitely ties in with your travel experience. And yeah, look forward to that. But we still got some recommendations coming your way, I guess, for the listeners. So
let's let's mention Fells Point, which is another place that I love to visit. Fells Point is another one. It's one of those historic neighborhoods. You'll go down there and you look down at the street, and it's like old historic cobblestone. So it really takes your mind back if you sit there and you think about where you're actually standing and all of the older businesses that are around it. Like the buildings are, older. One of the top rated hotels in the country is there, the Sagamore Pendry Hotel. It's, there you can get on the water taxi there, which will take you to the other neighborhoods in the city. And I always feel like when I go to Fells Point, I'm going to run into someone I know. It's guaranteed. So if you're like looking to run into people and reunite with someone who you probably haven't seen in a while, if you're there and you're walking around long enough, you're people watching, or you're once again supporting some of the local businesses, because there are a lot of, once again, clothing boutiques or family owned and operated restaurants and businesses there, you're going to run into somebody. And, it's kind of, especially in the summer and when we went through a few years ago, like the height of the pandemic, when everyone was finally able to get back outside, that was just like the place to be. It was, so much space to walk around and appreciate what you might not have appreciated before. But, they say you don't know what you've got until it's gone. Well, it wasn't gone, but you just couldn't enjoy it the way you were used to enjoying it. And
you mentioned the water taxis. Talk about that, because it's always a pleasure, I think, and a key part for me of the travel experience. I'm sure you can relate, just the taking public transportation to get around, taking different modes of public transportation. Yeah, I mean, if you can sit with people on their commutes and just, you're just part of, you kind of insert yourself into the daily rhythm of the city in a way when you take public transport. But this is a unique way to get around. Most places you're thinking, bus, train, whatever, but water taxi. Can you talk a little bit about, as a traveler, how just that in and of itself, is that an experience? How should we tackle that? Any advice around that?
So for me, when I tell people to catch the water taxi, it's one of those things, like you say, it's an experience. Some people are using it, to commute to and from maybe work, or they just don't want to drive at the moment to get from one area of the city to another. So they'll hop on the water taxi. But it's also a much more affordable way to see the city from the water, rather than booking some of these excursions that might, be more than you want to spend at the moment. Hey, I wanted to see what Baltimore looked like from the water. I wanted to experience the harbor from a boat, but I didn't want to, necessarily buy an hour and a half tour. But I got on the water taxi and I still was able to get that experience, some amazing views, talk to some people who are from here or may not be from here. And I got what I wanted. I am one of those people who, growing up, I did not necessarily feel this way. And it wasn't for any particular reason, but I always say, like, everything is so much better from the water. Like, I just love it. When it's perfect weather outside, the first thing I'm thinking is like, hey, how can we go out on a boat? Like, who's going to have a boat that we can go out on today? Or, hey, let's call this company and let's all go out and spend some hours on the water. I'll contact my friends and I'm like, hey, who's responsible for the food? Who's responsible for the drinks? Let's go out there. Let's do it. And as we know, as we say, like, this is a city that is around water, and it's just beautiful to see. And once again, that's one of those things that are going to allow you to see everything that's taking place in the city, because so much of the development is along the water. And you'll say, hey, I didn't even know that building was being built. But I mean, you'll get a little bit of everything from the water.
Yeah. That's a great general rule, Brian, right? Like, yeah, like everything is better from the water. It's pretty much true, I would say. I have to agree with that. Or from a mountain, I guess you could throw that in too, but something like that. But it is cool that, having a city on the water like that adds another element to the city, but then the city has to proactively get people out on the water in a way that's accessible, that everybody can enjoy. And it sounds like they've nailed that with the water taxis in the system.
That, and then they've been doing so much to the harbor to improve it when it comes to improving the water quality and the cleanliness of it. So it's funny to see. Like last year, I know they had a day where they demonstrated that the harbor is swimmable, and so many people went out there and they jumped in the water and they swam in the harbor. And I'm not going to say that I'm quite there yet, but hey, it's good to see and to know that it's, the water is in a much better condition than it was. I do remember when everything did slow down in 2020 and you'd be able to go out there and just like kind of see straight into the water, which I wasn't used to. And I know that's because things are so busy normally, but just that quietness and that stillness showed you that, hey, sometimes it just takes us to relax a little bit for nature to do its thing and for you to really appreciate what you have. We travel a lot just because we want to see something that looks different from home. And I'm like, wait a minute, it can look like this? Like just a joke when it comes to the water.
All right. This is an awesome list, by the way.
I'm thinking like, hey, we're almost there. I got one more for you.
Lay it on us.
Now, I will say this is another place that, hey, people go and they kind of get maybe not overwhelmed, but they're just like in awe. And that's Lexington Market, which is the world famous Lexington Market that's recently, over the past few years, been renovated and redeveloped. But it's one of those destinations where you're going to get a taste of Baltimore's culinary scene, a really deeper look into it. And you can kind of get anything that you want there, whether it be like a crab cake, a pastry, anything you can imagine, you can find there. And it's one of those things that people also know us for over the years. I mean, I know growing up, I had family members who would say, hey, I'm going to Lexington Market to get lunch. And we didn't live anywhere, like I'm not going to say anywhere near Lexington Market, but it wasn't close. Or, some people don't even work near Lexington Market, but they go out of their way to go there because there's a place there that they've established a bond with, a relationship over the years, and they're going to continue to go there to support that family's business. And, there's something in there for everyone.
Yeah, that sounds like a must do.
Yeah, because I know, a lot of people, this is also something I didn't realize until I started to travel so much. A lot of people travel just to eat. And food halls are what makes a lot of cities what they are now as well. And people will go out of their way, no matter where they are, to get some food.
Crab cakes, that's my downfall. You mentioned crab cakes and my stomach immediately starts rumbling.
And yeah, I mean, we all say it, not just because we're from here, but we're like, there's nothing like a Maryland crab cake. And if you try to order it anywhere else, I'm just like, this is a waste of time. It's going to be a letdown.
That's always
it's
tough.
Like, no offense, but you see it on the menu and you're like, don't order that. Like, do not order that.
When you go somewhere else and you have that dish that you love and you have the ideal version of it in your head, the idealized version, let's say you're out of Baltimore or out of Maryland. And like you say, you perhaps your expectations go up a bit too much. You're comparing it.
Absolutely. It's like, and sometimes when you do order it, just because you're like, you know what? I knew it. Like this was a bad idea, but I tried. At least I can say I tried.
Okay, well, on that topic, and what an awesome list. Thank you. By the way, I'll recap it really quick. Federal Hill, Mount Vernon neighborhood. We've got Camden Yards, of course, the Inner Harbor, Reginald F. Lewis Museum, Fells Point, the water taxis, and Lexington Market. Sounds like an incredible trip. The Maryland blue crabs, of course, being the most famous dish, I guess I would say, in Maryland, if that's correct. You can tell me if I'm wrong. Your best advice for people that want to have that Maryland crab experience?
So As much as I am a fan, as you can see, we just talked about it, of crab cakes, I think that the actual um, act of eating steamed crabs and picking them in a local restaurant is one of the most authentic experiences that you're going to get. That will really, some people come and you sit this steamed blue crab in front of them and they're just sitting there looking at it like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, okay, where's the meat? And they often use that to describe the city. They're like, you look at Baltimore as a crab, but in order to really get to know Baltimore, you've got to get inside and pick the crab. And until you do that, you're just going to be stuck with a lot of questions. And so, when I remember recently we went out to eat crabs a few months ago, and there were two of my friends there, and they're sitting there, and the server had to come out and show them how to actually pick the crab and get to the meat. And I mean, they had to work for it, but in the end, it was rewarding, right? So I think you can also use that to describe life. I mean, we want a lot of things out of life that aren't always something that you can visually look at and see what you're going to get. But until you put the effort in, you won't know what's there. And so I say, like, hey, let's go eat some crabs when people come in. And it's funny because it's something that no matter how many times you do it, how many times you have crabs, I don't think people ever get tired of it. And so, it's like a joke here all the time. We say, hey, you're eating crabs again, because it's something that you see locals doing. It could be every day during the summer. They're just like, yeah, it's like a perfect way to sit down and relax and bond with your friends and your family.
I love it. And an incredible crab metaphor for life too. That's awesome.
For sure.
So if you sit down and you do the steamed crabs thing, you're going to be doing what the locals do, essentially.
Absolutely. And, time will go by quicker than you would have imagined when you're doing it. But it's just one of those activities where, most of the local crab houses or restaurants that serve them, they'll let you sit outside and do it. I mean, and you take in the views, you hear everyone. I just came from Utah over this past weekend, and one of the people there that I was talking to who visited Baltimore last year were describing the crab eating experience. And they were saying, like, it was just so amazing to hear, the shells cracking and the people using their, the mallets to crack open the crab legs and to get to the meat. And they were just like, that experience was just amazing to be a part of. So yeah, I think it's something everyone should experience. And I know there's different, you'll get into it with people from different places about, whose crabs are the best or what's the best way to eat a crab. But I am going to be loyal to home. Always.
I love that too. And I love when people are appreciating all aspects of travel, like that auditory experience. You just described somebody thinking about the cracking of the shell and, the whole experience. And you could slot this. I would say it's fair. People think, oh, I would love to have like, a Guinness in Ireland, or I would love to eat, pizza in Italy or gelato in Italy or all those things. And you could say crabs in Maryland for sure.
No, absolutely. I mean, even on merchandise that you see being sold, whether it's in a store here or even in the airport before you go back home, there's going to be like, if it says Maryland, there's going to be like a crab on there somewhere.
Yeah.
It's almost a given.
Yeah. What are some of your best planning tips? Like now people are coming out of this, they've heard some of the awesome experiences. They're like, all right, yes, I'm in. I'm going to plan a trip to Charm City, to Baltimore, Maryland. How do I go about it? What should I, obviously you have your destinations, your neighborhoods, your things you want to see, your attractions, museums, and so on. But do you have any top line advice for people planning a trip, whether it's like maybe some places, areas to stay, or anything here? I'll just leave it open.
I say that, of course, everyone's best friend these days is kind of like Google, so to speak. Everyone's going to go on Google and type in best things to do in Baltimore, best places to stay in Baltimore, best food to eat in Baltimore. But I think one of the underrated benefits of social media is that you can run and open up an app and find locals. And we've gotten into a space now where the best way for me to plan a trip, no matter where I'm going, is to go on, say, Instagram or maybe TikTok, sometimes Facebook, and find the local experts in these places. And, whether it be a food account, an artist, anybody from these cities, I think is going to be your best source of information and even an unofficial tour guide for you. So, I mean, as much as I love a curated list that I might have went online and searched, or, I went on ChatGPT and it typed it up, I'm definitely finding who the locals are depending on. So yeah, like, I mean, you know how it is now. Like there's food accounts that will give you every type of cuisine you can imagine in a place, and you grow to trust them. So you see that they have a following for a reason. So I'm always going to be on social media, and there's so many times that I've visited places, and when I walk in and they're like, "How'd you find out about us?" I'm like, "Oh, someone on social media posted this place and said that it was a must when I visited your city, so that's why I'm here." And I mean, these experts, people call me an expert, but I look at myself and I'm like, hey, I can give you the answers to a lot of questions, but there is someone who knows more about the food scene than I do, or what new exhibits are opening up in the museums here. So once I find those pages, even right now as a Baltimore native, born and raised, I will go on social media and see, hey, what is this person recommending this week as far as cultural activities, music, anything.
You gave us an amazing list today, Brian. So I do have to shout out a couple more resources. First, your website, Beyond BMore, MORE.com. We'll link up to it. You're a local and you're a traveler and you get it. So I imagine people could reach out to you there and connect with you there. You got all the links to your socials and everything like that. And then I do find that Baltimore.org is a great resource as well for planning that I want to
absolutely. I love how easy it is to navigate Baltimore.org, and also I just like the design of it. It's like one of those things that you look at and it's just I always love the Visit Baltimore's logo, because if you look at it, that's like the more is the bigger part of the logo, and it just, if you know what it means, then you can easily see like, hey, this is what Baltimore is really about. You might think you think you know, but you have no idea, as they say.
There's a quote from your website that I just wanted to share quickly, and kind of leads into my next question. You said, quote, "Travel not only serves as an important tool of education, but also plays a major part in appreciating what we have, where we're from, and where we are going in life," end quote, which I love. And I also can't help but think that the spirit of that is a part of what you created at BMore See More, which is your nonprofit organization. Can you talk about the nonprofit organization, what it does, and what it means to you?
Yeah, so that quote is definitely one that I live by. As I stated earlier, traveling has just opened my eyes and my mind to so much more than I ever would have imagined. As I said, I grew up thinking that seeing not just the world, but the country was something that you did when you worked all of your life and you retired. And I did not know that, it was possible to get out and see some of these places easier than I was taught. And it's not always because of money, I would say. Like, a lot, you think that it's going to be super expensive to do, but then you find that there are resources and ways to, to travel on a budget. But also, the mentality that we had growing up, it was that, this is, like I say, this is something that you do when you get older. You stick around and stick to uh, routine, and then you go out and you see something different once you're older. And I think that, a lot of older people that I talk to, one of the things that they'll tell me is, hey, keep doing what you're doing. Don't stop. Don't slow down. I wish I had known uh, what you know at your age. I wish I'd have been able to see what you've seen at your age. And I've gone to some amazing places. And you asked me earlier, hey, what keeps bringing you back home? But um, I, I always see things while I'm on the road that makes me appreciate Baltimore much more than I, you know, realize that I do. There's some places, of course, that are not as developed as home, but there's some places that are much more developed than, a lot of our cities in the U.S. And it brings you back and it gives you like motivation to keep doing what you're doing. But, to imagine Baltimore or, some other inner cities of America prospering on levels that you aren't seeing it prosper at the moment. There's always room for improvement no matter where you are. But unless you have something to spark that desire to improve, then you'll just be fine sticking with what you know. And Baltimore is a city where a lot of people just, don't get outside of their neighborhoods. A lot of times it's because of them just being comfortable. And then sometimes they don't have the opportunity to venture outside of their neighborhood. But once you leave out of the neighborhood, no matter, you could cross the street and realize, hey, they are so much more different than we are over here. But it makes you appreciate them. And somebody can always teach you something that you didn't think they'd be able to teach you. I mean, like I said, I've run into people from so many different backgrounds in life, and just sitting down and talking to them for a few seconds has opened up my mind and inspired me to continue to do what I do. So in 2020, we launched a nonprofit here that still has not gotten back on its feet 100% due to COVID striking like 2 months later after we launched it. But I want every young man, not just in Baltimore, but everywhere, to be able to have the opportunities that I've had, and to not feel like it's impossible. We've taken trips from like Baltimore to DC, and I grew up going to DC often. Like I said, just, with my granddad or my family. And to know that, there are some adults who have never gone to DC is kind of like, huh? But then you get to hear why they didn't go. Some just didn't have the desire, or they, were so busy doing other things at home that they never got the chance to go. But despite us being maybe 45 minutes or 50 minutes away from DC, we are two different places. And over the years, me visiting surrounding areas and getting to know the people there have not only just given me a different outlook on them, but they have a total different perception of a Baltimorean than they thought they would have had. And that's the joy of traveling and seeing the world that I will never take for granted.
Love that. Well, I totally appreciate the local advice you gave us today on Baltimore, and I'm going to let you go in a minute. I do want you to, if you don't mind, kind of closing this out with either like a call to action, or maybe your favorite quote, or just, some more words of wisdom like you've shared throughout this interview. Before I ask for that, I was just curious. You said you grew up, your family manages funeral homes. I'm just wondering, because I feel like you have such a zest for life and a curiosity about the world. I'm wondering if being around, this is maybe going to sound morbid, but being sort of around death and people dying was somehow, did that shape your attitude and who you are today in any ways?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought it up. That is like one of the motivations for the way that I live and the way that I travel. There's been a lot of times where, not just because I grew up in a city where a lot of, people unfortunately have had their lives end prematurely. So there's, for as long as I can remember, I've been able to see, unfortunately, someone pass who was much younger than me. And I'm always like, hey, they barely got the chance to live. And I didn't, I was always fortunate that had not been, my reality in my life. And even when it comes down to, someone older passing, a lot of times I've had to sit back and read about their lives, or, and they could be 90 years old or 100 years old. And sometimes it might not be the best way to look at it, but I'll say like, man, there's like, hardly anything that they've been able to write about this person. And I just always would say like, I don't want that to be me. I don't want, life is life. You never know when it'll end. And I'm, as far as I'm able to, as long as I'm able to continue to do the unimaginable while I'm still living, I don't like to say I'll do it one day. I'm always thinking like, well, how soon can I do this? And, some people will look at me, they're always like, hey, I need you to slow down a little bit, or you on the road again, you're doing this again. And I'm like, yeah, I might as well while I can. So that's the way I live.
That's, I think, a great way to end this, and such great advice. And I really appreciate your time today. Thanks for putting together the list for us. And it was a blast. And when I'm coming through Baltimore, I'm going to be hitting you up, man. So be ready.
Hit me up. Hey, just make sure I'm here, right? It's like
that's true.
You get invites and people send you a message to stuff, and they're like, I got to ask you now, are you here on such and such, like a date? And I'm like, that's like 5 months away from today's date. And they're like, I know, but I have to ask you early because the chances are you're not going to be home.
You can't ask a traveler where they're going to be in 5 months.
You never know, right?
Thank you so much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day. Appreciate it.
You as well.
Take care. There you go. Thank you to Brian Oliver for stopping by the show. Thanks to the team at Visit Baltimore for helping us put this one together. Baltimore.org, of course, for all of your trip planning needs. I had no idea that the original Washington Monument was in Baltimore. Who knew? Well, maybe some of you did, but I didn't. That's something I'm going to check out when I go back. And I want to wrap this one up with a quote from Frederick Douglass. I just started reading his first memoir, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. He published it in 1845, I believe. If you haven't heard of Frederick Douglass, he wasn't originally from Baltimore, but he spent some significant formative years there. He was an escaped slave who became one of America's most influential abolitionists, speakers, and writers. He was actually born into slavery in Maryland and taught himself to read and write despite all of the laws forbidding enslaved people from learning. And I wanted to leave this episode with a quote from him, who said, "For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake." Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time. Peace and love to you and yours. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by ZeroToTravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.